Welcome to The Change Lead, the podcast providing leaders with the insight needed to get things done in a rapidly changing and complex world. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Connect with our community of like-minded leaders on our website, thechangelead.com. Welcome to The Change Lead with your host, Babatope Ipinyomi.
Hello and welcome. This is Babatope Ipinyomi from The Change Lead, and welcome to another episode of The Change Lead podcast. My guest today is a serial technology entrepreneur. He focuses on unlocking business growth through technology. My guest today is Godson Nkeokelonye. Godson's had the opportunity to deliver technology solutions to different industries ranging from travel, retail, automotive, industrial, and machinery spare parts. Today, Godson and I will have a conversation on delivering successful technology transformations for businesses in the challenging, fast-moving consumer goods sector. So Godson, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and welcome to the show. In terms of starting our conversation, I think it would be good to start the conversation by framing what you do as a technology leader in the context of the customers you serve. Okay, so I know you serve the FMCG companies. It would be good to know who they are, what does that even mean? And also, why is technology transformation so critical to these organizations?
It's a pleasure to have me on the show. I found this opportunity, and it's great work you're doing here. I'm impressed on how fast this is moving, and I count this a very big opportunity. Thanks. So FMCG is an acronym from fast-moving consumer good. In some climes, it is called CPG, which is consumer packaged goods. And this generally speaks to products that have low value products with very high consumption frequency and fairly complex supply chain. And then you realize that because of that, winning in that market is determined by how well you manage the core elements and the drivers of the supply chain. So it's a volume-driven business. Margins are very thin. There's a high turnover, and then you're also dealing with very short shelf lives. So you have to be right on everything to remain a going concern as a business. So that's FMCG explained. And in this industry, over time, technology have started playing a role in helping the stakeholders turn the corner and gain more insight on how to remain competitive. Personally, I work in transformation, specifically technology transformation. I mean, up until recently, there was no word like that. So I guess it's the new lingo. We're software product development people, and for some reason our experience have latched onto the FMCG industry, working all the way from manufacturing to distribution to the supply chain, marketing, down to the last consumer, everything along that value chain that requires technology. We have had some footprints across the region. So that's who we are. And I'm happy to take your questions.
No, it's really good. I think that's a very good way of introducing us. So we know who you're dealing with. These are organizations actually really critical to what we do, all the foods, all the things we consume very regularly. If they're low margins, high volume, so you can think of, toiletries, foods. Yes. I think these are the companies these are the providers you're referring to here. Okay, that's really critical. So they're actually a really important part of our consumer ecosystem. So if we if we think about these industries, so if I take a step back for a second and look at the companies I work with tend to be financial service organizations. Now, in this space, they have unique challenges. Every organization, every industry is unique. The one big challenge, and you might have already touched on this, what relates to FMCG, but the one big challenge for the organizations I work with, which are financial service organizations, is legacy systems. Right? They've got a lot of technology, but there's a ton of legacy. Right? This is often the elephant in the room question when you ask, what is the thing we need to deal with? The question is, what are you doing with legacy? So in the space where you're talking about supply chains, which is quite critical, particularly today, you're talking about high volume, low margins, right? With uncertainty and unpredictability coming into the market space. What would you say is the biggest challenge to which FMCG organizations need to apply technology to today?
So it's a good question, and it's a question running around the head of everyone who plays in that industry. Like I said, it's a very highly competitive industry. I mean, it's an industry where you think, there's really no chance for a newcomer, and then someone comes in and is winning. And the reason is the evolution of consumer behavior. Unlike most other industry where the customer journey is predictable, it remains the same, it doesn't change. In FMCG, tastes and buying pattern, customer behavior changes faster than fashion. So staying ahead of the curve is determined mostly by your ability to dictate early enough when the customer behavior trend is changing, and then adjusting your business model to respond to this imminent change. Now, this is very, very important in the sense that, so as a business, you don't craft a business model and say, this is who we are, this is our business model. Just like the product you sell, it's got a very short shelf life. So you now see a scenario where in 1 year, a business is having 10 different business models, targeting different customer segments at different times, and keeping tabs with when is it time to retire this model? When do we change this route to market? Because the customers are no longer clustering where we thought they were clustering. They are no longer buying how we thought they were buying, is what keeps you ahead. And that all converges to data. How much data do you have? What are the data points that you set up? And how realistic are the data you're fetching? Are you measuring that really, or as most? So historically, this industry has been a spray and pray industry, where you get the goods out to the market and pray for the best. It stops at the distributor or maybe at the most the retailer. You don't even know why your product is not moving from the retailer. Maybe the retail channel is not the best for that product, at least for that time, but you don't even know. You don't have the data to make such decisions. So yes, visibility is the biggest problem. Another one that just emerged during the pandemic, and we all saw this, was that of KYC. This is an industry that really didn't pay much attention in knowing the final customer. They knew that once I'm available and on the shelf, I sell. Historically, yes, that had worked. Then we were faced with this sudden challenge where the customer no longer has to go to the shop. And then there was a problem. If you take it back to the financial institutions where you work, KYC is the baseline. So even within the pandemic, you knew your customers, you knew where they were. They're probably carrying your apps, right? You know what they were doing. So targeting and reaching them and growing with them and adjusting to their current need was easy in the financial space. But with the FMCGs, it was a mess. And we are beginning to see the impact of that supply chain challenge that happened last year and is still ongoing to date. So yeah, KYC is important. And then predictive analytics and insights, which again dovetails to how much data you are getting and how fast are you able to make sense of that data. I think that's the most important challenge every company faces today. And then finally, visibility and optimizing the supply chain for effectiveness. How many people do I put in what role, in what particular routes? Which channel of the business am I growing? Which product should I retire? Which product should I sell in different markets? All this cacophony is going on. And what we see is most times people make emotional decisions or sports decisions that are not driven by historical trends. So, so the industry is going, depending on whether it's developed or emerging markets, the industry is going from those who are developed that already started capturing some data and now going back to mine the data for insight. And those who are emerging are beginning the first steps of let's begin to capture data and hold it. And then let's begin to design system based on what data we have. And let's begin to now unearth insights in that data. So different businesses and industry are at different levels of this journey. So this is what I think is the biggest challenge of the industry today.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of challenges.
Yes.
when you decode it, and there's a lot of need for data, visibility of data, and I think the whole thread of conversation what you just shared there is almost showing a need for business agility. You can't be dogmatic
Absolutely.
in your approach of this is the way. You don't know what you don't know. So you're going to have to deal with the challenges as they emerge effectively. So that is very insightful. It just shows how much is needed in that space, and the fact that it's so critical to what we just take for granted. A lot of consumers take these things. You just go to the shops, go online, you buy these things, and you take these things for granted. So thanks very much for sharing that. That's actually very insightful. If we go to the way you serve your company, your customers. So as a leader of a technology organization, and I recall the conversation we had. It's not a few months ago.
Yes.
And you're talking through how you serve your customers. And I took away a couple of things from that conversation. But one thing you did say that stuck with me was the fact that you are definitely not dogmatic in your approach. You didn't just assume, oh, I've heard this word, so I'll provide you this solution. But we're going to get the principles you follow in ensuring that when you're serving customers, you're providing a technology solution, it is actually successful. It isn't making, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it isn't making unnecessarily assumptions. Well, are there principles you're following to ensure that your customers are successful?
Yes. Thanks for that question. Yes, there are quite a lot of principles. So I work more in emerging markets. My principles may not apply for developed market where customer behaviors are fairly generic. I work in a market where everybody thinks their problem are bespoke until you do your full analysis and realize that, oh, I can just plug that thing into it and then it's solved. So you start from the point that you begin to understand that there is a huge chance that the customer doesn't even understand his problem. And your first deliverable is helping him understand his problem or the business challenge here. And a success of a digital transformation or technology implementation project hinges for us on three things, three core elements. The first is the people. The second is the processes that you then finally decide to implement. And finally, the systems you adopt for implementing these processes. But top of these three is the people challenge. Now, what you find in different organizations as you go along is, because we are technology people, is a different level of appreciation, let me use that word, of how much technology can help them unlock value. So especially at the C-suite, I say this. So the natural response is what I don't know does not exist. If I don't know, it is a distraction, take it off, right? So we have to go through that process of, even though you don't know it, you need to understand that you can leverage it. You can also learn it. You don't have to be an expert in it, but if you understand the deliverables, it makes your job easier and better. So that's at the C-suite. Our first challenge is to make sure that they appreciate what is about to happen. So you find out that most times before even a brief comes to your table, you'll be surprised that take for instance, if you're working for a multinational where a global decision has been taken to go in a certain direction, to a country manager or a regional manager, for him, that challenge is compliance. I just have to comply with what's been taken at the global level. But he hasn't really been able to internalize the value to him within his business, which is supposed to be the main driver. So one of the things we do is dimension very quickly in the conversation, how vast is this team, the leadership team that's going to receive whatever we do. And as soon as we can place them, and then it becomes easier, we begin to dimension how much work we need to do. So first, once that is determined, we go the extra mile of seeking for executive sponsorship. We've had projects fully delivered and never used. Not because the projects were not good, but because there were no executive sponsorship. Like I said, it was compliance. Invest in a visibility tool, invest in a sales automation tool. We have it. Is it delivering the value? He doesn't even care, right? So we get that executive sponsorship. That means that the owners understand what's about to be delivered and how to take advantage of it. Then we do a very deep requirement gathering. And of course, in this, for us as a business, it's 80-20. We do more work in requirement gathering. And having said that, most times when we get to implementation, and then you realize how wrong you were. But yes, we deep dive a lot in requirement gathering. We spend more time with the first line users. They will be system operators, because what happens in most cases is talent is communicated to you from executive level, and the real problem has gone through deterioration before it gets to their table. And then you find that you're fixing the wrong problem. So after taking a brief from the executive, we go down to the trenches. We sit down with the people in the field who are the first line users. We first interview them and then try to watch them do their thing. And then this aggregate data is what we put together and go back to the executive. You told us A, this is what we found on the ground. So why do we have this gap? The goal is to harmonize these requirements. And most times it makes them feel comfortable because you've gone the extra mile of fully scoping their problem and now giving it a name, and they can own it. Yes, you get it. And then after that, make sure we understand the picture of success. Now that we know the problem, what are those deliverables that once achieved, this project is marked as a success? The customer then, of course, has to own this picture of success. And that's what we work with all along. Now, it's important to understand as well that, so what we do as a business is the destination or the goal remains fixed. But because we apply agile principles, we understand that the route to this destination can take any route, but that destination doesn't change. So we are very dynamic about the route, but the destination we do not change. Otherwise, scope creeps will come in and the project might never finish. Or you deliver a very beautiful, useless product, right? So that's what, so we get this picture of success signed off and said, right, if you can give me 1, 2, 3, 4 KPIs, then you have been successful, right? And then we then go into continuous carrying stakeholders along in the product development life cycle. And how do we do this? By using agile sprints. We invite customers to sprint sessions, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. We record these sessions in cases where the customers are not able to attend, and we'll make it available for them to view early. And then we bring them into the product testing, modular testing, and processes. So they start taking ownership. Now, what happens is when you do this, at the time you're finishing the project, training and development collapses because the same people you want to train have been messing with the system for the last couple of months. So it becomes a very easy walkthrough, wipe the data, let's go live kind of scenario. Or let's migrate the data and go live, because the hand-holding session kind of reduces. But in reality, what we found is, is no matter how well you've done your requirements, no matter how well you've done your designs, when the tire hits the road, you begin to see how stupid you could have been, right? You see a lot of blind spot that you never paid attention to. And this is where agile methodology comes in handy, because it allows you to continuously iterate as you go along. And doing this, you carry your stakeholders along, saying that, okay, for this reason, and I'm going to give you some examples and as I go along, for these reasons, we will not go this route. We will go the other routes. However, we are achieving the same thing. These are the bottlenecks. And so agile and sprint is at the core of what we do. And that's pretty much I'll give you an example. We were working on a marketplace product. And one of the very early assumptions is, as you'd expect, marketplace is either a two-sided, a multi-sided marketplace, right? And then on your design, you say, okay, this side of the marketplace is expected to maybe put up products, pricing, and quantity, so that the buy side of the market can always see.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty straightforward, right? And when we finally went live, what we found out was the seller side of the marketplace will put up product, put up pricing, and never come back, right? So managing their inventory online became a growing concern, because they have other channels of sales beyond your online channels. So people were closing deals on prices that had moved or quantities that no longer exist. So there's no way you could have imagined this at design. You felt like if I onboarded you properly, then it's assumed you know what to do. So we had to quickly go back, and every other 2 days, there's a prompt that says, are these still your prices? Do you still have these volumes? Otherwise, make the amendments now. And that had greatly reduced the disappointment the buy side have been getting. And when we see that you don't respond to those kind of requests, the algorithm kind of pushes your own listing down the pile, because you are a standing risk, if you see what I mean. So that's some of the challenges, and it take it back to people, processes, and systems. So this is a people issue, it's not a system issue. So we constantly have to try to marry these three to make sure we get to that. So that's pretty much how we go about this project.
I think that's brilliant, very insightful, and I think I can relate a lot to that. There's a lot of content, a lot of value provided just by describing what you do, and I think probably we'll have to dig into it another time in a bit more detail. But there's a lot there. What I'm hearing is you're really following agile principles properly. You're not doing agile for the sake of agile. You're like, this is providing value. You're iterating in a very sensible way. And I think there's one thing you said at the beginning of that description, where you said that this is a challenge you think is specific to emerging markets. I don't think so. As I'm working with developed market customers, we're seeing the same challenges here as well.
All right. Okay.
All right. So
okay.
This is not an emerging. This is not people are people anywhere they go. what people don't know, they don't know. As in, so it's very interesting. It's good to have these conversations like this. So you see that this is a global challenge. Every customer has it.
Right.
The way they express it, the way it's packaged may look different, but it's exactly the same challenges you find in UK, in the US. Anywhere you go, these are the same challenges where a lot of times when you're looking for a technology transformation, the transformation itself is about people, it's about mindsets, different ways of working. Technology is a tool that allows you to get there. And the first step to actually deal with technology is actually, like what you said, is you don't have a phobia for technology because you're not an expert. If you're in the C-suite, you're accountable for leading your organization through a technological change. You at the very least need to embrace it and lead it. You don't need to be the expert, you don't need to be the coder, but you do need to lead. All right.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest challenge. So what we face here is, I don't know it, don't bother me. If you can do it the way I do it, right? So we've as a business, we've started doing that walking trainings where we just go to our existing clients and show them what's possible. And then now there is no project that they are able to bear themselves. So walk me through, how can I use this? And then halfway into that engagement, you begin to hear, we can use this to solve that problem. So when you talk of deal origination for us, we have a principle that most times when you see a brief that is advertised, you're already too late. As a business, we try to be part of creating that brief, right? And that increases your chances of winning it when eventually it becomes a brief, because you know the rudimentary fundamentals that made it possible.
Yeah, brilliant. If we look at going back to the customers in your space, so these are fast-moving goods, consumer goods. So on the retail side, supply side, the entire supply chain. When I think of the challenges faced, and I may be wrong, but the challenges I see facing that space, I think of platforms. So platforms like Amazon, I think you already mentioned it, like a marketplace. So Amazon marketplace. I think of Facebook, now Meta. I think of Google.
Yeah,
I think,
Meta.
I think of you. Indeed. I also think of Jumia, which is very big in the markets that you play in. And that these are marketplaces that could disrupt the customers you have today. It would be good to get your thoughts and insights as to how are those marketplaces, how are these platforms impacting them, if at all, and what can technology do? And it's like when we say technology, we're talking about not just the solutions, but the people, process, and the systems we implement. How can we apply technology to these challenges?
Right. So it's very important that you highlighted this. I mean, if you listened earlier on, I told you that the challenge of that industry is KYC. Now, what I didn't say to you is, anyone who hears me say KYC will say, why the hell will I bother with KYC when everything I put out in the market gets sold, right? And I also did say earlier that this market is a market where consumer behavior changes like fashion. Very short shelf life, and they are moving on to something else. And if you're not keeping tabs of them, you lose them, right? So there is a new route to market channel that's called direct to consumer, has emerged in the last 10 odd years. This is the route that gave rise to all the companies that you have mentioned. D2C has been largely ignored by FMCG over the years because the KPIs they track is a manufacturer to key distributor to wholesaler to retailer, and everything must go through that pipeline. They haven't looked at other models, and then online emerged, and then the consumer behavior, and this is across industries. So people start the buying journey online, first seeking for information, right? Comparing prices, and then maybe finally walking into a shop to pick up a product. In the US, I understand I can't remember what store chain it was that ended up changing their business model to selling floor spaces to their uplines, because people go to Amazon, look at the electronics, or come in store, look at the electronics, touch it, feel it, the phone, and then they go home to buy from Amazon, right? So they found out that, guys, we're becoming showrooms. We are no longer sales outlets. So they now they change the model to allow the product owners to pay showroom fee for taking up spaces in the showroom. And they even went as far as doing in-store promos that you can redeem online on Amazon and stuff like that, so that they know that, okay, this deal has originated from our stores, right? And that's how they've transformed to remain in business. So yes, these guys have become what the industry will call a big disruptor. So what I said and I'm going to give you one very personal experience. It's so funny. What I say to customers is, don't see them as a disruptor, embrace them. It's just another channel in your route to market, right? And a lot of them are doing that now. So you now have roles as head of sales e-business, or head of marketing e-channel, and stuff like that emerging. They never used to exist before. So businesses are beginning to treat these channels as a potential revenue source, right? So those platforms, like I said, the first thing they have going for them is KYC. They know who the buyer is. They know their buying patterns. They can micro-target them. And they are not going to the multi-hub supply chain that we see typically in the FMCG industry. It's one warehouse and direct to consumer. So they've built the infrastructure that allows them to reach the customers at a micro level. So the question is, can FMCG do this? Maybe not necessary, because it's a lot of investment and a lot of change in their business model. So what I recommend is a model where you embrace them as partners to grow your business. And this is already happening. I mean, in where you mentioned, I've started seeing bundled FMCG product from across 5-6 different FMCG companies and being sold as a bundle, right? One of the brands that we worked for some years ago, sell I think juice for kids, I don't want to call names, and these are staples that kids will go to school every day. So one of the ideas we were pushing was, why not tie in your customers into a long-term deal? You know that this family goes through 5 packs every month. Why don't you get them into a deal and then you drop it off every month and you get 10,000 of them in that deal? And that's a new channel.
Yeah.
Right. And then oh no, it's going to affect the market from those who from their typical route to market. I'm saying no, not everybody is going to buy that. Some people will buy when they can. People who have predictable income are happy to tie. I have kids that will go to school for the next 10 years. So I might as well get this particular milkshake or whatever available for them every day they are going to school. And I don't have to add it to my grocery shopping list. So those are D2C, direct to consumer strategies that the industry needs to start paying more attention to, right? I give an example where a beverage company was trying to reward its retailers and distributors based on performance. And then they decided to give out a refrigerator for those who have performed well. So, so that the internal procurement decides, you know what, we are going to buy 5,000 units of refrigerators. And then we will use it for that distributor promotion, so we can reward them right. And then they ask for bids. And because of the volume, all the OEM refrigerator companies participated. Name them, Tamco. Everybody participated, put in their prices. And then there was this one strange bidder that nobody knew about, saw coming. It was one of the companies, the platform companies.
Okay.
Bidded with the product of one of the existing bidders. So the guys in the procurement were like, okay, what's going on here? The owner of this product is bidding and you're bidding with his product. How do you stand a chance? And upon interrogating their offer, you realize they say, you know what? Buy from us. It might be a little more pricey, but don't worry about delivery. We'll deliver to all your winners.
Yeah.
And here they are. The business had a big budget for purchase, another budget for delivery and fulfilling this thing. Now that whole budget goes off, and they won it. Yeah. And they are not even players in the industry. So that tells you the kind of feature we're going into. They won it. They were more pricey, but the business decided to go with them because they had the supply chain logistics to make sure that the prices gets to the winner. All the business needs to do is say, here are my list of winners, get it to them. Right? So platform business models, like to your question, are a big disruptor and it's a growing market space. My recommendation to FMCG is not to attempt to play there because of the operational requirements, but rather explore opportunities for collaborations with as many as possible. Focus on your core strength, which is products, assortments, and making sure that you have availability and you have enough data to determine what stock to hold at what time.
Insightful. I think those are very, very, very interesting examples. I don't know if you're aware, but Amazon, when they first started, and this sort of explains their business model today. When they first started, their business model was they will sell products cheaper than they bought them, right? To drive volume to the platform. And that's actually how they started. So they were losing money, even though they were making tons of sales. They were just losing money. But they got to a critical mass. Everybody just went to Amazon and they created a platform for what we have today. And we're talking about years ago when they were just selling books and they just moved out. It was buy things and sell it for cheaper, get volume. And it sort of speaks to the example you gave, which was a very insightful example. And it speaks to the fact that, and this is across industries. I know we're talking FMCG, but this is across industries. We as leaders need to be thinking macro scale. You can't just look at, oh, this is what's happening in the product development division. This is what's happening in technology. This is what's happening between myself, the distributor, and the retailer. You need to see the big picture as much as possible because this is one system, it's a global system. So if I go to my...
I think you hammered on something very important, which is that technology is a tool. I say this to my customers all the time, right? The problem is everybody sees technology as a magic wand. Once I sprinkle technology on something, everything works. If you have a bad strategy, technology will make it visible. It's not a replacement for your strategy. You have to sit back and do the strategic work. And what technology does is allow it to scale, allow that strategy scale at minimal cost to you. And then when the strategy is bad, and this is what we've experienced a lot, 9 out of 10 times technology is blamed. And it's one technology out of the window, another one in, same people, same process, failure cycle starts again.
Yeah, and yeah, I know what you're saying. I've seen that a few times as well. So, it's very insightful. If we think macro scale, so when I say macro scale, I'm talking about global supply chains because the space you're working with is all about global supply chains. And this might not be an easy question to answer, but if we think about the global supply chain being disrupted with this model you refer to, this direct to customer models coming into place, the rise of platforms. What is it? And I'm not speaking specifically to FMCG now, but from a technology perspective, what is it that we need to do to get the disruption here, to get over this disruption, more for the benefit of the consumers? How can we apply technology to this challenge of supply chains being disrupted to this extent that we see today?
Right. So one of the things I've been evangelizing for the last year or two is that of predictive analytics, especially in supply chain. So one of the new companies that we've just started, Spraywork, has focused on this, and we focused on spare parts, because when you look at a piece of machinery, you're looking at a minimum 2,000 SKU of spare parts, and that's very conservative. If you look at the automotive industry, for instance, the Japanese guys, I think the Toyota guys founded the Just in Time. Mm-hmm. So imagine the shape and life of Just in Time in the middle of the pandemic. It's dead. It's a model that assumes that everything is ideal. I can get my product as and when I need it. But this is real life now. So predictive analytics is what tells you, if you can, to the extent possible, how do I use historical data and external data to determine when there will be a glut, when there will be an undersupply, how do I stock up, how do I make sure I'm not tying down too much capital in inventory, both input and finished goods, how do I make sure I'm tracking the rate at which items are moving, and I'm ensuring that as a business there is optimal cash flow, which is the lifeblood of any business, right? So across board, what you find is companies with excess inventory, a lot of out of stocks, a lot of downtime in production, downtime in distribution, and predictive analytics specifically helps you start to plug this sort of challenge, and it's at the heart of supply chain. So post-pandemic, orders are taking longer to arrive, lead times are getting longer. How am I adjusting my internal processes? How am I adjusting my distribution line to make sure that, okay, if it's going to take me, what used to take me 2 weeks now has to take me a month? Can I grow the volume that I'm requesting to make sure I have enough buffer while the situation improves? And while the situation is improving, am I keeping tabs so that I don't find myself holding excess stock? And then you couple this with things like price volatility. So remember, FMCG is a low cost, low margin, high distribution network industry. So any drop in any of these variables can mean that you have failed as a business. So you need to watch everything there is. So predictive analytics is where I think technology can help. And then input substitutions for things that are not nearby. How do we start sourcing? I give an example in one of our startups. What we try to do is, as you'd expect in the other markets, Africa is treated as one market, right? So you find a lot of businesses here expediting importation for products that are probably 5 cities away, and they don't even have visibility to that. So they have very, very close-knit, you have 10 suppliers in your procurement system, and as long as they don't have, it's not in country. And then you're expediting, paying sometimes 4 or 5 times the price just to close the gap. But somewhere outside your network, that product is sitting as excess inventory. You don't even know. So what we're trying to do is create that visibility that before you go into expedition, you have clear visibility of what's available within your region and how you can take advantage of that first as a first line. And then looking at substitutes in the case where you can consider that. So technology does all this, creating visibility, providing insights, helping data-driven decision-making, and then, of course, optimizing your operation in line with modern realities. So there's a lot technology can do in that space, and not just in FMCG, across industries.
Yeah, I think that is. In fact, I'm really looking forward to following and keeping tabs with what you're doing in that space, because this sounds very exciting
Thank you.
and potentially a lot of impact there. If people who watching, listening, want to become like you, for example, they want
Yeah.
to they want to become a technology leader. They want to learn how to, get into this space of providing successful solutions, technology solutions to customers, either as an entrepreneur. I know you've started many startups, either as an employee, just as in, or even how can they get started? What advice would you give someone who wants to get in the space of becoming a provider, a successful provider of technology solutions? What advice would you give?
Right. So very interesting question, and I'll start with ourselves as an example. 2 years ago, we made a decision as a business, which is very audacious. And when I say it to customers, they look at me. And what was that decision? I don't pitch. I do not pitch. I want to win without pitching. And this is the reason when you pitch, you're actually educating the customer with the hopes that you will get the job. So a customer sits back, listens to 10 pitches, properly informed, and then walks away, right? So we realized that as a business, this was taking a lot of toll on us. We'll go through tons and tons preparing for pitches and then losing out at the end of the day, and nobody compensates for that. So we stopped pitching. So what we did as a business is we had meetings, we had conversations, we had maybe a presentation showing you what we are thinking and a quote, right? And
Yeah.
you'll be surprised in a volatile market like ours, it's been working magic because the customer knows when you get it.
Okay.
Right? A pitch doesn't give you the opportunity to show that you get it because you're made to walk a straight line and respond in certain ways, and it doesn't give you that visibility. So my advice first to an entrepreneur is I would say this, and without apologies, services is dying.
Okay.
Cloud is killing services. If you look at the ERPs, the MRPs industry, the platform generally, multinationals now have global ERP where all their country businesses can log in, right? And your life, you can see anybody. Take for instance a Unilever. You log into the system and you are available to Unilever all over the world. Everybody can see you. So every day the opportunity channel is thinning out for services because everything is going cloud. So the focus should be in building products, pivoting to building and owning products that services a niche across multiple customer categories, right? That way you become more relevant to the customer in a long term. They don't own your platform. They're happy to pay you to be on the platform, to use your platform. And that for me is the future, right? Then focus on solving problem customers are willing to use and pay for. Some ideas sound good, look good. It's nice to hear and have, but not many people are willing to pay for it, right? So make sure you're solving eminent problems that customers are willing to pay for. So in terms of your product development process, make sure that's one of the things you are checking for. So sometimes when I have meetings, before we get to commercial, I quickly ask you, so peradventure we find a fix for this, how much are you willing to pay for it? It's an ironic question, but it helps me dimension that you're not wasting my time or you're not just keeping me busy doing your bidding. So it begins to let you know what kind of opportunity you're dealing with. And then place evolution and product improvement at the heart of what you do. You don't build one product and go to bed. You have to constantly improve that project in line with modern and current realities. And that's the only way your customers, the LTV of your customers. So otherwise, as a platform, you run the risk of a very high churn rate. Customers are getting in and leaving through the other door. So you want to keep your churn rate as low as possible and grow your customer acquisition as much as possible. And as you see, it's lower entry point for your off-takers because they are paying you maybe month on month or on a user per user basis month on month. And as their user base grows, it becomes a recurrent source of income. As against, I commission you to do a project, and at the end, thank you for your time, and then you start hunting for the next project. As an employee, I would say focus on the new growth area. Infrastructure, cloud infrastructure to be specific. Data analytics, data engineering is the future. People need to be able to capture data, clean data, store data, manipulate data, and make sense of data. Anywhere in that value chain, you cannot go wrong, right? Focus on the future so that you can remain employable in the next at least 10 years before the next evolution happens, right? Don't focus on building or embodying learning skills of yesterday, because no one is going to hire you for that. And then more importantly, if you want to get a job, don't go for the big organizations because the ladder will be very long for you. Look for fast-growing, small niche company. You get to learn a lot faster. You get to interact a lot more. And in a very short time, you find yourself very close to the top of the pinnacle. So for the employee, that's my advice. Thank you very much.
Oh, very good advice. And I think a lot of people listening to that will understand where you're coming from exactly. And I think that's very, very insightful advice. So thanks for that. So sort of in closing, it'd be good to know a little bit more about you, as in the way you think, what you're doing. So it'd be good for you if you can just share, Godson, you've achieved a lot of things, but what are you doing? What are you interested in? What are you doing right now? What's your business doing right now? It'd be good to get a bit into that.
Right. So thanks. Generally, the last 15 odd years of my life, I've been in technology. And that's all I do. I'm focused on using technology to unlock growth across industries. My journey has seen me work a lot with startups. Probably I'm on my fourth startup. Across fintech, tourism, FMCG, engineering, and even real estate. So, all the tag names you hear today: fintech, property tech, marketing tech, they are all then happening behind me. I say, oh, I didn't even know that's what it was called, right? So people are now putting labels on things that we did without really naming and owning them, right? But what I found is that the principle is the same. Whatever industry you find yourself, it's still a people, process, system journey. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a multi-potentialite as much. You're using the same skill set across industry. I've also, at some point, been an employee. I've seen the challenges that have come with that, where you are meant to deliver. Organizations are forcing you to deliver what they want, right? At the expense of what you want to do. So you get to a crossroad where you begin to weigh the two. Say, am I happy to continue to just doing their bidding, or do I want to go do my own stuff? So as a business, the way I set up my organization is everyone in my team is set up to be an entrepreneur. Within your lifetime in the business, you're supposed to touch base with every aspect of the business, not necessarily to be an expert in it, but enough to understand it. And ultimately, we prepare you to own a product and we bid you farewell. And that has worked fantastically well. We've done about 4 or 5 of that. And just recently, I myself was sent off. So I've been kicked out of the ship. I now have to go and prove myself somewhere else. So that's really been my trajectory. I'm a sucker for businesses that are willing to solve problems, and you don't have to be hard about your choices. Let data drive whatever decisions you make, and not be dogmatic about it. Or people who have Stockholm syndrome. The devil I know is better than the one I don't know. So, but if you allow data to lead you, I have learned that people are different from what they say they are when you look at data. So when you do an interview, people say, oh, I'm that way. But when you sit back and observe, you get a different result. So making sense of data is at the heart of the next few years for me, especially in emerging markets.
Perfect. That was really insightful. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can people contact you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you, to get a hold of you, to learn more?
I'll probably say my socials. It's at Twitter is at Godson Madu, GODSONMADU. It's my preferred, and then we can cascade from there to maybe emails. I've got tons of emails, so I can't possibly share them all in this call. Yes. So I think my Twitter will be the very first place. I'm fairly active on Twitter, and then we can take the conversation up there.
Perfect. What I'll do, I'll make sure I put your Twitter link in the show notes so people can reach it quite easily. Okay. That'll be a good way, so you can get some contacts coming to follow on the back of this conversation as well. Thank you very much for making the time to have this conversation. Very insightful. A lot of value here, as in I think we will have to bring you back at some point and to learn more about what you're doing as well.
I mean, I must thank you because I saw when you started this, and in a short while, you've grown so well. I always say to people around me that finishing is more important than starting, and ideas come freely, but those who are able to take it to the finish line are those who get the reward. So I'm a sucker for people who can deliver. And I have never doubted you from back in 10, 15 years. Is it up to 10 years now?
It is more than 10 years.
More than 10 years, yes. Back in school and all that. You've been a very razor-focused person, and you're not doing differently here. So I'm very, very proud of what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for those kind words. Thanks, Godson. We'll keep in touch. Thanks. Thank you.
We'll keep in touch. So take it easy, man.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Are you going through a technology transformation in your organization? Would you like to join in the conversation on how to successfully implement a technology transformation? Connect with a community of like-minded leaders on our website, thechangelead.com. When you visit our site, click Join to join the community. Check out the show notes for details on how you can contact today's guest. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, review, and subscribe. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great week, and see you next time.